presenting the thrilling adventures of an incredible personality. A being no larger than an ordinary man, but possessed of powers never before realized on Earth. Faster than an airplane, more powerful than a locomotive.
So today we are finishing our series entitled Heroes, and I thought no better way to introduce today's final installment than last night. We're putting our boys to bed, and their hero siren began blaring through the neighborhood. And it's one of those sirens, I liken it to the bat symbol, right? The bat signal, as soon as you see it in the air, here comes Batman. When this siren is playing in the neighborhood, our boys just think they need to run to the goodness that this individual brings about. And I'm thinking, why are you playing? What are you doing in our neighborhood? It's almost 8 o'clock. Like, why are you in our neighborhood? And so, needless to say, he went around our block like multiple times. So you kind of hear it. It's loud, loud, loud. Then it kind of goes softer, softer. Then you hear it go louder, louder, louder. And each time it gets louder, he's like, he's back. And I'm like, stop it. Just close your eyes. I'm going to leave. And then all of a sudden you hear it again. And it's like, hey, so Ice Cream Man, thank you very much for the joys that you brought my boy. You were so heroic. A couple of weeks ago, we made the statement that a hero saves the day. And for many of you, the ice cream man is a hero. You're working in the yard. You're doing the yard work. The lawn is almost beautiful. And then you hear the ice cream man and you're thinking, you just saved my day. But for many of us, we read this and we think, well, there's nothing heroic inside of us. That for us to truly be a hero, that there's something, there's a disconnect, there's a challenge, a struggle, because we look at this, a hero saves the day, yeah, but for us, a hero really saves the day in a really big way. And we never really come to grips with this idea that I can be a hero. We never come to grips with the fact that I can be heroic because we get tripped up by this in a really big way. But here's what I want to encourage you with and what I want to challenge you with today. Is I believe inside of each one of us is a hero that is destined to be tapped, is a hero that can make incredible headway, that can make a difference in our culture today. Now, sure, we might not all have the capability to make a big, big, big difference, but we all have the ability to be somebody for someone. We all have the ability to be the individual that somebody's looking for, to be the person that somebody needed on that difficult day. We all have the capability inside of us to truly be somebody's hero, even if we're not a hero in a really, really, really big way. We have the capability of being somebody's really, really, really big savior, regardless of what day it is. I mean, you never know. You look outside in your neighborhood, you look in your family, you look in your job, you look around the sphere of influence that we have, and you have the capability to be somebody's hero and to save them in a really, really big way. So today, as we conclude, as we kind of put a bow on this conversation, I want us to deal with and to talk about the birth of a hero. How did a hero become a hero? What does it look like? How is a hero born? I mean, wouldn't it be nice if you just came out with your cape, right? Like, it's like, oh, well, here's your cape. You get the chance to save somebody. Like, wouldn't it be nice if we all just came out with a cape and we had an instruction manual? This is whose hero we're going to be. And we get to intervene and jump in and save their world in a really big way. Now, to set it up, I want to kind of make a right turn, if it's okay. Because we like movies. We like summer blockbusters. For many of us in here, you like to read. In fact, I was talking with an individual in here just a few moments ago that went on vacation. And what did they do on their vacation? He grabbed a book and he's been reading this book while he's on vacation. And for many of us, when we go on summer vacation, we've got a reading list. And isn't it true that most of the items that we're reading about are like high drama? We want to get lost in something where we don't have to use our mind. Maybe you're like me and you're like, no, I don't read fiction, nonfiction. Like, give me fiction and give me a pen. But for most of us, isn't it true that we are attracted to drama in others? We love to see the drama that's going on around our world. We love to see the drama that's happening in somebody else's life. We love to see the drama that's next door. We are attracted to drama. That's why we love movies. We'll pay big money to go watch whatever movie they redid or whatever movie they're about to redo. Like, we'll pay big money because we're attracted to drama in others. But even though we're attracted to drama in others, I find that we resist the drama in our own life. We love drama in your life, but when it comes to my own life, like, we want to keep it all vanilla or chocolate, whichever one came first. I don't know which. But we resist the drama in our own life. And if you're a follower of Jesus, if you're a Christian in the room today, you've probably been to a prayer meeting before. And a prayer meeting is something I would tend to call an anti-drama club, if you're honest. I mean, you think about the prayers that are in the middle of this prayer meeting, right? I mean, it's, hey, keep us sick, keep us well, help our health. We're traveling, give us safety, give us security, give us a good job, a high-paying job. And not that any of those are bad. But do you see that even in our prayers, we tend to pray prayers of least resistance? We tend to try to pray the drama out of our life. And for some of us, we try to keep drama as far away as possible. We don't want it. We're attracted to drama in others' lives, but we resist the drama in our life, which raises a little bit of a tension, a struggle, maybe a question that I would ask. And the question is this: when we resist drama, do we resist God? When we resist the drama in our own life, do we resist what God can do in our life? When we resist the drama, the struggle, the hurdle, when we resist the tension, do we resist the opportunity of God to do something incredible in and through our life? And one of the reasons that this is paramount is because when I begin to think about the foundation of our faith, when I begin to think about faith catalysts, like, what are things that have strengthened your faith? If you're a follower of Jesus, if you're a Christ follower, we have this idea, this thing, and it can be very difficult to define, but we call it faith. And for those outside, those that are far from God, when I say faith, I'm saying a confidence in God. It's a confidence in God that we believe that God's going to come through for us. And when I ask followers of Jesus, when I ask Christians, hey, tell me, how did your faith get so strong? You know, oftentimes they go back to the drama. They go back to a dramatic moment in their life where they had no answers, and then all of a sudden they were able to overcome the drama, and their faith was strengthened. Their confidence grew because of the drama, because of what we would call a pivotal circumstance. And so my question is this, is when we resist drama, do we resist God? Now, maybe in your life, the drama it could be in your work. You're sitting here today and you know that on Monday, you're about to walk into some of the most dramatic things that you've ever seen, and you're just like dreading it. Maybe for you, it's your neighborhood, that there is a family in the neighborhood that you know could use a little help. There's a family in the neighborhood that has had some struggles, some hiccups, some hurdles. Maybe it's somebody at your school. You know that from time to time, you've got a classmate that this summer, they at times have been short on money, and oftentimes the only meal that they get is when they come to school. And you know that as a classmate of theirs, and maybe for you, the drama is there something I can do to help? Is there something I can do to fix? Is there something I can step in and do? Because for many of us, we see problems around us, right? We know what's happening. We see the struggle, the tension. And when we see something that needs attention, don't we tend to say this? Well, somebody should do something about that. Well, somebody should do something about that. Man, our HOA, you would not believe, somebody should do the grass, or somebody should weed the flower bed at the front of the neighborhood. Somebody should do something about it. Are you kidding me? Y'all have got family issues. Well, somebody should do something about your teenager. Are you kidding me? Would you keep your toddlers clothed? Are you kidding me? Somebody should do something. Not speaking from experience. Somebody should do something about that. For all of us, we see a struggle, we see a hurdle, we see a problem, and what do? We're quick to say somebody should do something. But isn't it true that nobody really does? That the somebodies never really stand up? The somebodies never really go through with it? And so we're left with somebody should do something, but nobody does. Week 1, we defined a hero, and we said a hero is this. A hero is someone who sees what everyone else sees, but they choose to do what no one else does. A hero sees what everyone else sees. They see that something should be done about it. Something should happen. Somebody should stand up. Something should be accomplished. But what we said is a hero then chooses to do what no one else does. And so today, what I want us to do is we're looking at the birth of a hero. I want to change our perspective. I want to change the way we see what's going on in our life. I want to change the way we see. Because heroes see what everyone else sees, but they choose to do what no one else does. For many people, this perspective looks like this. Everyone else sees obstacles, but the hero sees opportunities. Everyone else sees obstacles. Oh my goodness, are you kidding me? If I step up, if I wade into this drama, do you know what it's going to cost me? It might cost me a friend. It might cost me some money. Ooh, it might cost me having to move. It might cost me my job. Scott, you don't understand. I'm watching my boss cut corners left and right. If I step up, I could lose my job. A hero sees an opportunity, not an opportunity to undermine the authority, but an opportunity to live a life that's worthy of influence and respect, to wade into the mess and see that life can be lived differently. You see, when everyone sees obstacles, a hero sees opportunity. Now, we laugh about it and we joke about it, but we tend to gravitate away from drama. We want smooth, wrinkle-free life. But as I've looked through and studied the accounts of the Bible, and you look at different individuals in the Old Testament as well as different individuals in the New Testament, one thing I find is that there are very few, if any, wrinkle-free examples in the Bible. I would imagine if you were to go and look at the Bible and be like, I want to be like this person. There were some hurdles and some struggles, and they definitely had some drama in their life. And today we're going to look at one such individual. We're going to look at a drama-filled account of a boy as he went face to face with a not so little boy. In fact, the story we're going to look at today, the account is an account that you're probably very familiar with. It's become ingrained in our culture today. In fact, every March, there's this thing called March Madness where 68 NCAA teams jump into this giant pool, and bosses dread this because productivity goes through the drain the whole month of March. It's called March Madness. And what people love to do is they love to find who's going to be the David that knocks off the Goliath. Today, we're going to look at the story of David and Goliath. And as we do, here's what I want you to do is I want you to look. I want you to try to see some accounts of heroism within the story of David and Goliath. I want you to think about from the perspective of our definition of a hero. A hero sees what everyone else sees, but chooses to do something differently. As we look at the story, I want you to see what David sees, and I want us to document and think about it, because I think there are some clues and some handles that we can take as we move forward. Now, to give you a little context, David was nothing but a 10 to 15-year-old boy. When the story that we're about to unveil, he was a little kid. He would probably be either in Upstreet or Transit right now, if we're going to be honest. And not only that, but David was there was a prophet named Samuel who came on the scene and anointed David as the next king, which that's cool and all if you're David. But the problem was Israel already had a king, and it wasn't David's dad. In those days, if you were the king, your next in line for king tended to be the firstborn son you had. And so it was obvious that the next king would be Saul's firstborn son. But Samuel comes on the scene and says, no, we're going to change the game. Instead of your firstborn son, we're going to make David the king. So I'm going to anoint you, but just don't tell anybody. Just, you're going to be the next king. Just wait. And so in the midst of David realizing I'm going to be what's this going to look like? Saul's kingdom was in disarray. Saul's kingdom was on the decline. His nation was in trouble. In fact, we're going to pick up the story where the Israelites and the Philistines are going face to face, and the Israelites are scared to death at what could happen. They weren't being encouraged by an inspiring king. They were cowering in the midst of the hurdles. And so we're going to pick up the story. And if you love English, I'm telling you, the account we're about to read, we're going to cover a lot of ground, but there is great detail. And if you like war, if you like action, there's some action in here too that's pretty incredible. So we're going to combine the great detail of a novel with Marvel Comics, and we're going to get the story of David and Goliath. So we'll pick it up in 1 Samuel 17:1. It says this, now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at Soka in Judah. They pitched camp at Ephes-dammim between Soka and Azekah. And it continues on to talk about the Israelites. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. And then in verse 3, it says this, the Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them. Now, for some, you look at the accounts of the Old Testament, you begin to discredit, well, that's just the Old Testament. But the thing I love in these first three passages is there's incredible detail, such great detail that we can take a modern day map and show you exactly where these accounts happen. In fact, if you look over here, this is actually a picture of the Valley of Elah as well as what's modern day Ephes-dammim. And this is where Soka was in Judah. And here's where Saul's camp was. And this is where the Philistines were. And they would kind of come together right in this area. And so you imagine this little area, you've got the Israelites and the Philistines, they all come together right around here and draw their battle lines. Well, it continues on, talks about this giant. There was a champion named Goliath who was from Gath, and he came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits, which to put that in modern terms, that's roughly about 9 feet tall. Some Bibles, some translations say 6 feet 9 inches, but regardless of whether we're talking 9 feet tall or 6 feet 9 inches, it's pretty understood that he was daunting. He's tall. He would be a starter on any NBA team, but he wasn't rail thin. He was thick. I mean, not NBA. Let's talk Dallas Cowboys left tackle. This is who we're dealing with, and then some. And it says he was 6 cubits and a span, and it goes on to describe just how big he was. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he wore a coat of a scale of armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels, which would basically be about 125 pounds. It says on his legs, he had bronze greaves. If you're looking for something to buy today, go look for some greaves. And he had a bronze javelin was slung on his back. And then it talks about his armor or his weaponry. It says his spear shaft was like a weaver's rod. Basically, it's like 12 by 12. I mean, this is huge. And at its point, it weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went ahead of him. This is Goliath. You think about it. His armor, just the breastplate, just the armor he had was over 120 pounds. It's like a soaking wet junior hire draped over him, or 2 draped over him. That was his armor. And he had these giant greaves over him, all made of bronze. He had a helmet. And I mean, he was intimidating. He was fear-inducing. And it says that every single day, Goliath would stand and shout. Goliath stood and he shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not the servants of Saul?" He begins making fun. Aren't you just the servants of Saul? And he goes on and it says this, choose a man. Goliath is toeing the line saying, man up. Don't you have anybody? Come on, man up, Israelites. What you got? Choose a man and have him come down to me. And he says, if he is able to fight and kill me, We will become your subjects. We will become your slaves. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. And then as if Goliath couldn't stick that dagger any deeper, he went right at their religion. He said, then the Philistine said, this day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other. And it says this. He says, and on hearing the so you have this Goliath, this behemoth who's defying the army of God, who's defying the Israelites. And every day he's going and he's screaming and he's screaming and he's screaming. And he's yelling at them, hey, man up. Aren't you willing to take it on? Can't you do this? And it says with every single time on hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and they were terrified. Every time Goliath would toe the line, they would run. They would cower. And it would go on and say that Goliath would do this 2 times a day. And this was going on for over 40 days. I mean, you think about it, over a month's time, these 2 armies are just coming together at this valley. And then all of a sudden, out walks this giant that starts pointing a finger and yelling at them. And then they were dismayed and terrified and ran away. And then they would come back. Just this game, this pattern, this craziness. In walks David, 10, 15-year-old. David's dad had told him, hey, go check on your brothers and take them some cheese and crackers, would you? Just go take them lunch, take care of them, see what's going on. Just make sure they're doing okay. And so David comes on the scene, and it says this. He goes and he drops off his things to the keeper of supplies, and he ran to the battle lines, and he asked his brothers, how are you doing? He just wants to go and check on them. Hey, how's life? I see things are not going. Like we're at a standstill. What's wrong? Like, tell me, give me an update. I need to take it to my dad. And it says, as he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance. And David heard it. His usual defiance. In other words, he wasn't creative. He just yelled the same things over and over and over. And it says, whenever the Israelites saw the man, they all fled in great fear. And the Israelites are sitting there talking to David. Hey, David, the Israelites are saying in this minute, now the Israelites had been saying, do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. This man is crazy. He's big and there's nothing we can do. So hopefully we can just keep towing the line and we don't have to mess with the system. We don't have to actually fight him. But David, he's just curious. David asked, okay, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? I mean, you see some, not arrogance, but you see in David a confidence. What will be done for the man who kills him? Not, well, what will be done for the man who fights him, but what will be done for the man who kills the Philistine and removes this disgrace? And then he goes and he begins to drop it a little bit. And he says, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? When all of the Israelites saw the scenario as one of a giant obstacle, David looks and says, this is an opportunity. When everybody is looking and seeing the hurdles and the hiccups and the 9-foot tall individual, David looks at it as an opportunity to step forward and to show how great his God is. David didn't look at this as an obstacle and fear. He was, hey, what's going to be done if I kill him? What's going to happen? I mean, he's an uncircumcised Philistine. We got this. And so David's seeing things a little bit differently. But David's brothers weren't too happy with David's line of questioning. In fact, Eliab's a little bit angry. His older brother, David's oldest brother, Eliab, heard him speaking with the men, and he burned with anger at him. And he asked, why have you come down here? And then he begins to even question him even more. And tell me, who did you leave those few sheep with in the wilderness? Like, all you've got is a couple sheep. Why don't you go and take care of them? Just get lost, run. Who did you leave those few sheep with? And I know, and he goes on, and he goes from his occupation right to the heart. I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle. Maybe you've been in that scenario where you've had somebody who has struggled with insecurity and they decided just to undermine you. They began to to leverage baseless claims against you. They began to say things that weren't true to try to undermine you and make you look less than you are. And David begins to burn with anger. I mean, David's frustrated. They're taking their anger out on David, and David responds. He says, now, what have I done? I just came to check on you. I brought you cheese and crackers. What is wrong with you? Like, why are you taking this anger out on me? Goliath is standing in front of you. For 40 days, you've been scared to death. Why are you taking this anger out on me? Can't I even speak? And it continues on talking about how David continues to ask questions, and to such a degree that David's line of questioning gets all the way up to the king. Saul hears that David is asking a lot of questions. And so Saul wants to inquire about who is this man who's asking questions of this Goliath guy. Nobody's asking questions about him. Everybody's fearful of him. Who is this little kid? Who is this man that's asking questions? And so David goes and presents himself to Saul, and it says this. David said to Saul, hey, don't worry. Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Imagine you're the king of the Israelites, and a 12-year-old punk comes up and says, don't worry. Don't lose heart. It's going to be okay. And why is David saying it's going to be okay? Because your servant, me, will go fight him. David, I don't think you understood. You're a little shepherd boy. You're 12 years old. He's old. He's big. You're going to be toast. So Saul begins to question him, and he says this, you are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he's been a warrior from his youth. In other words, he's been winning battles and wars since you were in diapers, kid. This ain't going to work. You don't understand what you're getting into. But David responded, and he says this, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. Oh, really, David? That's your rebuttal? Really? You've been keeping sheep? And David's like, no, you don't understand. Let me be honest. Here's my resume. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it. I struck it, and I rescued the sheep from its mouth. Now, I imagine these lions and bears that he's attacking are probably much like lions and bears you guys encounter as well. I hope you don't encounter many of them. But for a 12-year-old boy to look at Saul and say, you know what, when I was keeping sheep, I valued my sheep to such a degree that if a lion or a bear came after me, I would attack it. And it says that when the lion or bear would turn on me, because obviously it would, who's this punk kid trying to beat me down? I would seize it by its hair, and I'd strike it down and kill it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. Oh, okay, that's kind of cool. You're validating yourself a little bit. And then he goes on, he says, this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he has defiled the armies of the living God. He sees this whole dynamic differently. And it says, he goes on, why does he have such confidence? Because the Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of the Philistine. At that point, Saul really didn't have anything to say. He says, all right, sounds good. Go. And may the Lord be with you. He kind of like, oh, good luck. Go on. Have fun. See you later. And Saul's thinking in his own terms. So he's thinking, okay, how do I help this kid win this battle? We're toast. How do I help him win? Let's give him armor. And so here's what Saul says. He dressed David, this little 12-year-old, in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor, and on him, he put a bronze helmet on his head. And he continues on, and it says this, that David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around. Now, have you ever seen like 12-year-olds try to walk in their daddy's clothes? You know, whether they have the jumpsuit. I remember like that was the best hide and seek place at my house was when I would get my dad's, I'm going to say onesie. This is so wrong, but his work clothes. Like he had, when he had to go into the plant, and that was the best place because it had his boots on it and it was just like a big zip up. And so you could just go in there, and I was not quite as tall as him. So I just put I just duck in and whoop, nobody could ever find me. It was great. I loved it. Have you ever seen a 12-year-old try to put on his daddy's clothes? Here's David. Now imagine that as David's trying to walk out to battle, Goliath's like, where'd you get all that oversized armor? I mean, David's walking around trying to, but he wasn't used to it. And then he says, I can't do this. I can't go in these, he said, because I'm not used to them. So he took it all off. And so then he got what he's used to. He said, then he took his staff in his hand. He chose 5 smooth stones from the stream. He put them in his pouch of his shepherd's bag. And with his sling in his hand, he approached the Philistine. Now, I don't know why he chose 5 smooth stones. There's a lot of reasons, a lot of ideas, a lot of speculation as to why. But I think the bigger part of this is not necessarily what he grabbed, but that he did something. Rather than just what he grabbed, I mean, that was great. I mean, he took his staff and his stones, his slingshot. I mean, that is a 12-year-old's dream. But he did something. In the face of ridicule, in the face of uproar, in the face of obstacles, David seized the opportunity. He saw things differently, and he did something. It goes on in verse 41. Meanwhile, the Philistine with his shield bearer in front of him kept coming closer to David. And he looked at David. He looked David over and he saw that he was a little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome. And he despised him. I mean, think about that. Goliath's like, oh, are you kidding me? You're sending this kid? I mean, yeah, he's a cute little 12-year-old boy, right? Like, I'm going to squash him. Goliath said, am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? You got a staff? You're coming at me with sticks? And the Philistines cursed David by his gods. And he says, come here, and I'll give you flesh. I'll give your flesh to the birds and to the wild animals. And so David, I mean, at this time, I imagine the Israelites are like cowering and frustrated, like, oh my goodness, the hope of our nation is in a 12-year-old boy. Saul, what are you thinking? He just said he's going to give this kid to the birds and the wild animals. And so David responded like any 12-year-old to a 9-foot tall man. He responded. He says, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. And then he gives him a time frame. This day, the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and I'll cut off your head. Imagine a 12-year-old, right? This day, right? And so he continues on. He's staying with this very day. I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals. You said you were going to give me away. I'm going to one-up you, double down, right? And the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. Now, this is why this is a big deal. Because in that day and age, it was deemed if you were a nation and you lost a battle, it was a defiance of, it was a defense against. It was basically saying that your God's not strong enough, your God's not great enough, that your God just isn't God. And so in that day and age, there was an underlying current that if you won the battle, the presumption was that your God was in control. And if you lost the battle, the presumption was your God's just not God. And David is sitting here saying, this very day, I'm going to be able to do all this. Why? Because there is a God in Israel. Because I've got my confidence in, I've got my faith in, I've seen how God has delivered me from the lions and the tigers and the bears. Oh my, I know that God is God, and I've put my confidence in that. And he goes on and says, all those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. And then the Philistine begins to move closer, because that's what you do. He moved closer to attack him. And David ran towards him. I mean, this is like, why? Like, what's a 12? He is so confident. It's incredible. He doesn't like run back or doesn't like, I love going paintballing, and there's all these obstacles that I don't see as opportunities. They're obstacles that keep the paint from hitting me. So you stand behind it and you kind of look over, you're trying to, David's like, I don't need no stinking big rock. I got 5 smooth stones, rocks, whatever they are. I'm going to go towards him. I'm running at him. And it says, reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it, and it struck the Philistine on the forehead. And it says the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down to the ground. Just like that. So David triumphed over the Philistine. With a sling and a stone, without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine, and he killed him. And it says, as if David was prophetic, he said, I'm going to cut your head off. David ran and he stood over him. And this is where it gets a little gory and graphic, but the detail is so fascinating. He took hold of the Philistine sword and he drew it from the sheath. And after he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. And it says, when the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Story of David and Goliath. Story of a little 12-year-old boy whose confidence was in God, who, as a hero, he saw what was going on differently. He looked at life from a different lens. He saw what everyone else saw. The Israelites saw that this is an individual that is worth fearing. But David looked at him and said, he's not worth fearing. If he's worth fearing, then what about that lion and the bear that I took out? See, a hero sees what everyone else sees, but chooses to do. A hero sees what everyone sees, and they don't see the obstacles. They see the opportunity. And so my question for you is this, is everything inside the Israelites led them to cower. Everything inside of the Israelites led them to run and retreat anytime he stood up. And for many of us, when we see something that should happen, when we see a scenario that needs fixing, when we see something that we should do something about, when we are tempted to ask the question, someone should do something about it, who is it? Can I ask you, why do you usually cower? Why is it for me that when I see a need in front of me, it's easier for me to resist the drama and try to step around? Why is it in our life that when we see drama, we resist it in our own life? We love to watch the news. We love to watch the movies. We love to watch Facebook Live. But when we're face to face with drama, why is it we tend to resist the drama? You know, one of the things that I found in David's account is this, and I don't know if this is welcoming, if this is assurance, but God doesn't always give you the assurance of the outcome. And wouldn't it have been nice if God told David, hey, here's what's going to happen. Now just go. God doesn't always give you the assurance of the outcome, but here's what we can see in David's life, is God does assure you that he will be with you. God doesn't give you the assurance of the outcome. When we wade into the mess, when we see the drama, God doesn't assure you that, oh, if you stand up for this, you're not going to lose your job. Don't worry about it. If you stand up for this, if you go and talk to your neighbor about this, if you wade into this drama, God doesn't assure you that you're never going to have to pay another dime, that everything's going to be great. But isn't it true that sometimes heroes sacrifice greatly to be a hero in somebody else's life? They save the day, and sometimes it's daunting. But God doesn't assure you of the outcome. He assures you that, hey, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to walk with you. And that's why I love the idea of pivotal circumstances. When it comes to your confidence in God, so many times we're able to have confidence in God in the hard times, because when we look at our past, we saw that, you know what, the outcome didn't happen the way we wanted it to happen. But you know what, I'm a better person because of it. The outcome didn't quite happen the way I really dreamed it happening. But you know what, because of what I know now, I see life differently. I see life from a different perspective. And one of the things we can pull from the story of David, one of the truths that I think are clues that we can pull out of it is this, is the same God who is with me in the small moments will be with me in the big moments. David saw how in the midst of the hurdles, in the midst of being a shepherd, of taking care of just a few sheep, that he saw that God was with him in the small moments. And it gave him the confidence that when a 9-foot-tall, 6'9" giant was in front of him, he didn't cower. Another way of saying this is God's faithfulness in the past is a promise of his faithfulness in the future. That's pivotal circumstances. That's the idea that when I look at my past, I see what's going on to such a degree that I can have confidence that God is who he says he is. So when we see drama in our life, when we see a scenario where we look at it and we say somebody should do something about that. When we go to work, when we drive through the neighborhood, when we drive through, maybe it's Maybe for you, it's poverty. Maybe for you, it's helping families survive. Maybe for you, it's you've got teenagers and you want to pawn them off to parents of toddlers and give them away for free for babysitters. Whatever that is in your realm, when you see something in your life, somebody should do something. I want to ask you, how do you respond? Another way of asking it, it's a question that we asked many, many moons ago. In the midst of one of the incredible series, this question came up as we dove into creating new resolutions. The question is this: what breaks your heart? What is it that breaks your heart? What is it in your span, in your influence that really breaks your heart? And you sit there at night and you think somebody should do something about that. Somebody should help. Somebody should step in. Somebody should wade into the drama. What is it that breaks your heart? To follow that up, I want just to process 3 easy questions, I think, and then we'll be done. First one's this: what breaks your heart? Who needs help? When you define what it is that breaks your heart, who is it that needs help? What can you do? What needs attention? What needs attention in your life? What needs attention in your work? What needs attention in your neighborhood? What needs attention around you? And then what needs to be done? It's easy for us to look at that last question and say, well, somebody should. But my challenge is for you is to be that someone that should. To look at the drama and wade into it knowing that regardless of what comes, you can put confidence in the fact that God will be with you. You can put confidence in the fact that God has been with you before and He will walk with you. So what breaks your heart? What is it in your sphere of influence somebody should do something about? And what is it that needs to be done? I believe that in this room, there are countless heroes that may not save the world in a big way, but could absolutely save somebody's world in a really big way. God, we love you. And we thank you so much for the fact that you are a big God. God, and if I were completely honest, sometimes it is so easy to resist the drama. It's easy to resist the struggles. It's easy to see life through the perspective of obstacles and just step away. But God, I pray that in this room that we would come face to face with the question, what breaks your heart? And that God, we would not be content just sitting back and doing nothing, but that we would wade into the drama and we would be willing to be the hero in whatever scenario it is. God, I pray that we would come face to face with that question and we wouldn't settle for somebody should. God, give us the courage to be that somebody. God, I love you. I thank you so much for the fact that you are a big God. For that we love you. For that we thank you. For that we need you. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.